camera's gonna set up them videos all the time. Hey there, middies. This is Scary Scouts and Pirate City Caribbean film series. Simon Angels here. Today's date is October 10th, 2024. We're just gonna lifetime about the reactions for about 10 years of 4 months evolution for this about the instance for about that was a difficult could be tell for the interesting for this about that was a foremost and forecasting for in this incidents for the any time between Elmo Ridge in 2011 and 2014 incidents. It could be that happens for right now between 2008 to 2011. This is for incidents. Ridgecrest has 2002 and 2008. After I moved from Northwood from the Edgewood about 3 years ago, I was for discovering to as soon as it's possible, right? Things about foremost evolution here. This is from Edgewood to here in Puyallup to South Hill. I expect that to as soon as it's possible. When I went to the Ridgecrest at 6 years in the South Hill, I concern that for believing either for most of the time. It is like consideration as soon as it's possible. When I concern I had to eat hot lunch for right now, that was like in a Passover for 5 years ago. That's just pretty much in a like few seconds ago. As long as it's interesting for in the past like about several days ago, I could count on out between January 1st, 2002 and the New Year's days when I moved to Ridgecrest Elementary Schools. Between the last appears when I graduated for awards of 2008. I do so. It seems like it explains sometimes. It's like all I need is go over there to room 7. I was assured that the great teachers between teaching people for special education teachers between Mrs. Roy, Mrs. Knowlton, Mrs. Fitz, and Mrs. Van Gorkum. I would see Duncan and Tyler and 2 Tylers and Jack, Jessica and Stuart and Cameron. I sort of basically, they have peer buddies here between sophomores and juniors and senior peer buddies here. There's my good shows and friends. What we have here is about the field trip, and we have Northwest Track to Common Point Zoo and Defiance and Aquarium, and field trips that have Olympia, track meet, and Northwest Track. I was sure that once more, it seems it could be pretty much of the people announcing for do so. It's like more, I guess. I don't especially for believing either, like explains to my opponents is like we wish it was. Believe us elementary schools has about the sportsmanship of athletics, academics, and activities. They will be there. Oh, that's my strawberry soda, and that's like I just bought it from from my brother last 2 days ago when I went to the grocery stores where I do so. That's what I guess. All I did is like rewind that to exactly to make out to remaster to make a friends back to for Ridgecrest Ferrucci and Emerald Ridge. Let's say we talk about first grade, second grade, third grade, fourth grade, fifth grade, and sixth grade. I was for there sure for kindergartens. I was moved to on the Ridgecrest. When I was it appears to be on the Mrs. Smith's class for first grade. When I was eating for lunch about 30 minutes ago, I don't supposed to kick out for the last few moments ago. So it seems like Mrs. Roy was pretty upset to me for running around for the hallways and kicking young people to the classrooms, and if their teachers in classroom, they have to be kicked out, and that's where it happens to be punished to go into the office, go out for the timeout for about 45 minutes ago. 45 minutes, it takes about longer for 45 minutes. When I basically, Mrs. Roy was pretty upset with me about any much of time, any much of I've been disciplined. Maybe it's not about explain to me that this happens. Some people can do have about some ridiculously. I was walking outside for the portable place for Mrs. Blumenthal's class. I walk into the Ridgecrest Elementary Schools for the memories here. I was a little. I walk in through there to teachers' driveways to the parking lot, and that's for grown-ups, so that's for music portables, and on the left behind the building. Same as to me, and same as to the Mrs. Blumenthal and Mrs. Jody and Mrs. Van Hoff and PE class. Sometimes people can do have particularly place for all the time. The truth is, I was like a lot of people could be the pure buddies and hanging out with friends, loving peoples, and my brother, basically she got AIDS and HIV. It just caused me the human immunodeficiency virus, and acquire immunodeficiency requires, we don't know, some I don't know, sometimes it including human immunodeficiency virus is costed more than about the sick people, including acquired immunodeficiency systems. That's like AIDS and HIVs. Just like one of the others is like on after Eazy-E died on the movie on the Straight Outta Compton. That's one of those about before on. And could be difficult virus. They don't have any about the vaccines on. They only have to do this one about it takes 14 days to 2 weeks in the medicines. And that happens sometimes. I just don't want it to be alone to take anyone to secret. And that's what happens. When I was there about this first grade, it wasn't a good time. So second grade, as far as I had the good time too, I wish that I make it to on the Mrs. Grace class for second grade. Before I was a grown up all the time for lasting for the 20 years for the evolutions. I did what I should for believe it either for all this time. For instance, I was sure that it says I bonus up for all this on the good students that they'll be there for me and the gracefully for 65 minutes ago. I'm not instant leave about interestingly. I was shameful. I just left a Mrs. Grace class for this young lady. So about, I feel bad about a young lady sometimes. So she's a little one. She's good. She's a kid. So I was the one for the looking for the starters. Now, exactly, I was. Um, I do know sometimes that Mrs. Grace is a good teacher. When I hang out about 60 to 90 minutes ago, I was there for recess, go for the music for Mrs. Blumenthal, and that was a wrong class all the time, and that was like 60 minutes later. That was like a music program, the concert, and it's tonight. Yeah, could be what happens today. I just pick up on my mom and my dad, just once at a time, just one patient at a time for reason for do so for each. Well, catching my friends sometimes, as far as I'm concerned, for these evolutions. So, in this day, for this night, it's gonna be difficult to me, but my life on Puyallup School Districts. It could have been bring my friend back at like a remaster between 2003 and 2004 school year. It was a difficult to had it a good date at this time. Lauren was a good friend, she's a fifth grade. I feel bad about it all the time. Yeah. I'm so sorry about what happened today for about Lauren. She's a good friend. Well, let's just say I'm just saying I just wanted to say I'm just feel sorry about on what happened today for room 4. This is from Mrs. Roy, Mrs. Van Gorkum, to Mrs. Carson, and Mrs. Fitz. Call Miss Leah. Yeah. I just felt sorry about what happened today, and for a lot of people, I feel sorry about what happened. Yeah, it could be what happened sometimes, and on. It was a good hard day for the last day of school, but I was there for about organification. And then it could be about the next chapter for is 3 as the third grade. So that'll be on 2004 2005 school year. So that'll be Mrs. Dahl and the third class. So that'll be on 12:30 at the that'll be about 12 in the lunch, which is that case at about 12:30 at recess, which is about every 30 minutes for lunch and the recess, which is all concerns for it is about due to the appointments anytime between my friends and relatives and teachers and principal's office and librarian lady, and she's the teacher as Mrs. Bloom. And perhaps it's too late all the time, but it just feels me it I just felt bad about the whole time for ways that I should listening for these teachers. It is a hard time as far as I'm concerned about Mrs. Roy, Mrs. Fisk, and Mrs. Van Gorkum. That includes Mr. Jim and Mrs. Van Gorkum and Mrs. Fitz. I truly was I tell you guys about the secret about my new friendships and loves when we were kids. I know the sure if we do so, it probably like sure do it about guess. We do it by foremost. Which should I guess for storylines for this is about the bloating stuff at any time and any case. And that's as pretty much as soon as it's possible, as long as my responsibilities to my actions between this Ridgecrest staffs and teachers and friends and students. Yeah. I just felt bad about teachers and staffs for this at about the first and third grade for this chapter 1 to 3 between the first, second, and third grade. I was there for on the South Hill, like others, it could be 6 years and evolutions. Much as like all the others could be like you and like those people. So I just don't like to talking people to themselves and myself and herself and himself. It doesn't like seeing people do blow themselves about it all the time. It is just due to about explanation point for explanations, illegal observation yourselves, and due to the appointments. No much as idea for this dealing with two for blowing this up. The whole process is about to the change of blowing this up all the time. And my younger Jack is a former student. I got bid him, so I don't do bid all the time. So it seems to got me to attempt to the timeout for about probably just like 15 years later. Like others like it. Mrs. Fitz was pretty upset with me, and Mrs. Van Gorkum, she was also pretty upset. She was really, really mad, including Mrs. Curson and Mrs. Roy. She would have killed me sometime as far as she is hoping at it. Because she doesn't know this all the time. She doesn't have the biting people. She has about the biting students all the time. She doesn't like it people biting in the school all this time for the legal for fighting, and others could be about the bad day. If you do have the point sheets of the papers at it, that makes you have the rough day and okay day. And that's gonna need yourself for the behavior if you have a large privileges and lost of sight for this due to the consequences in 30 days and 30 nights at in the month. Like a whole month and the 30-day consequences, it is just due to on elementary school students' consequences, and most of them have about including 2 weeks, which is about on 14 days. So we would have to apologize to what happens for right now. And those people could do have to apologize as what happened today. So I feel sorry about it what happens today, and it just makes me work at it. So it's just due to about the whole mess things up for the instance for listening to people for room 4. I was there for Mrs. Stahl have music and the concerts, including 4th grade. I just love this. I just love the songs I like in Mrs. Blumenthal. I like it. I like an instance all the times for blowing this up. You were there for me all the time. I were gonna have to check up tomorrow. Alright guys, so and this is gonna be chapter 1 to 3 at the Ridgecrest Elementary Schools for first and second and third grade for Mrs. Smith, Mrs. Grace, and Mrs. Dahl. And that's just gonna have 2 storylines about from room 7 through room 4. So make sure to don't forget to hit and subscribe, more contests. So Twitter, Instagrams, Facebooks, Google, and Vines, and social medias, and the mostly have on YouTube livestreamers.com. Live videos is like YouTubers as far as that concerns. Yeah, it's gonna be on it all the time between the chapter 4, 5, or 6 time for the each side. So let's see, gonna have to on chapter 4 to 6 time for the part 2. Alright guys, feel free to death Or I just say feel free to watch, and don't forget and keep your regimenties. Have a good night.